Hello and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from the Breaking News Show in Honolulu and eTurbo News. With me, as always, is Dr. Peter Tarlow in College Station, Texas. It's a nice day, and I know surf is up here. We're expecting waves up to possibly more than 40 feet in a few days. So that means we are in for some spectacular events on the North Shore of Oahu. How's everything in your part of the world, Peter?
Well, we don't have any waves here because we don't have an ocean, but we did have a full year's worth of climate in one day. We had it was cold in the morning, it was then rainy, then the sun came out an hour and a half later, then it was warm, and now it's night. So we've had dark, light, cold, warm, dry, and rain all in one day. So it's coming to College Station gives you an opportunity of seeing the whole world's weather in one day in one location.
Wonderful. So that makes it very diversified. So what's going
Oh
on?
yes, it's the diversification in one place.
And how's everything else progressing with your project?
Well, all is doing well. Thank you for asking. I think, of course, I've been watching the news. One of the interesting things that's going on right now is the World Economic Forum that takes place I guess, yearly in Davos, Switzerland.
Yes.
And also the head of the United Nations was there. And he actually had some really scary statements to make. Of course, one of his three, I think we could really look at is somewhat we need to as challenging. One is that he still worries very much about climate change, and despite all that's taking place, that's a real issue. Of course, there was a big thing that went on in England, where someone finally admitted that if England disappeared, just sank into the ocean, it would not have one iota of change on climate change. That the entire amount of pollution that comes out of England is 2% of the world's total, and that the real issue is what will take place in Asia and Latin America. So that was kind of an interesting concept. The second thing that he spoke about was that 2023 may be a very rough year for economics, and that both the world stock markets and economies may be impoverishing people. And of course, that if that's true, and I don't know that's true, and there's no way of predicting what will take place in a year's time, but were that to be true, that would be a real threat to the tourism industry, because obviously tourism comes from expendable income. And the third thing he predicted was that the war between Ukraine and Russia will not end anytime soon, that it will be going on for a long, long time. And that, of course, has negative consequences, not only for Europe and the United States, but really on the whole world. So, of course, he doesn't have a crystal ball. I'm just saying what he predicted. I'm hoping he's wrong.
Yeah, and Peter, there are so many mixed messages coming out. I can tell you, every day we get a press release from someone else telling us how great the predictions are for travel and tourism. That starts with the UNWTO, what is a UN agency, expecting a record growth of tourism. Of course, they rely on private research they're paying for, and they're selling this research. So we don't know how reliable this is. But today, the news from United Airlines that they generated a profit of $848 million, far more than expected. That is quite some news considering we're coming out of the COVID situation.
Right. So there's really some interesting reasons around that. One is that the airlines all received large bailouts from governments. Not only the American airlines from various nations around the world. Secondly, people are traveling again, and so the airlines reduced flights radically. So the number of flights are much less. So therefore, the number when you're on a plane, it's almost 100% sure to be full. They've been able to raise prices, and so yeah, you would expect that. The question is, if United had over 700 million, $800 million in profits, when are they going to share a little bit of that with their customers? Their food is certainly not up to what it should be. The service is not up to what it should be. I fly United all the time, and I'm rooting for them to get better. But even if you're on Polaris, Polaris today provides you with a meal that was equal to more or less 10 years ago what you got on economy. Now it's a little bit better than that, but not much. It certainly is not what it was pre-COVID, when
Yeah.
Polaris was a really elegant service.
No, absolutely. But you can see there are mixed messages coming out. So it's not like all negative in a way, whatever the reason is behind the positive part, especially, yes, United Airlines is interesting news because it goes along with what UNWTO and other research is saying in the world. Of course, I agree with the passenger part. I'm flying United as well. But who's actually in line are the pilots. Today, there was a warning strike in San Francisco by United Airlines pilots, and they're urging the company to take care of the pilots before they take care of everything else. So,
and you know that
demand.
That's based on an FAA ruling yesterday, which expanded the number of palpitations that a pilot's heart can have. In other words, a pilot today does not have to be as well as a pilot had to be yesterday. And that's kind of a scary thing. Now, I realize planes somewhat can fly themselves, but still, you do want a pilot to be able to take over. And if, God forbid, a pilot on a major airline has a heart attack, that's a very not good situation for anybody to be in the air. So the FAA has loosened the regulations on pilot safety.
Yeah, and that is a trend what started some time ago. If you look at the example in Germany a few years ago, when the Eurowings, or they call it German wings at the time, pilot decided to crash the plane because he had personal difficulties, and everyone on board died. So there is a lot to do for airlines to ensure the safety and ensure the sanity of the pilots. If you see also in Germany, the recent strikes at Lufthansa, it's all pilots not being satisfied with their salary and their jobs. And so even if you don't want to pay, I think you have to kind of take in consideration the psychological dangers that comes out of it.
Airline safety is a real issue. And as you know, we just had a terrible crash in Nepal. Now, I realize that what happens in Nepal might be very different than what happens in the United States or Europe, but it's still somewhat interconnected. And the fact is, wherever there's an airline crash, and yes, I understand that airlines are still the safest way to travel, but you really, when you're 35,000 feet in the air, you don't want a problem.
No, you don't, definitely. And I think we all agree on this, that safety has to come first. And when you hear stories about Southwest Airlines stopping our flights, maybe we should applaud them, because if it wasn't safe to operate these planes with so much chaos in the company, it's better to cancel instead of just trying.
And of course, we not only had Southwest Airlines, but then last week we had the first grounding of all planes in the United States since 2001, since the September 11th, and it was supposedly because of a fluke within a computer that, and what the government didn't explain is, why are these computers not updated? How is it that you could bring the entire air system to a complete halt, and tens of thousands of people, of course, were inconvenienced, but it meant people were missing flight after flight, because with a spoken wheel type of situation, if you're flying from a Midwestern city to a hub city in order to catch a flight to Europe, your first flight might eventually take off, but you've now missed your connecting flight, and you may have to wait a day or two, and with airplanes less with less flights and fuller flights, you may not be able to get on a flight for a day or two if you miss a flight.
Yeah, and that also becomes really a matter of national security. So if this is possible to do, what about
Sabotage.
Yes, and especially in the times of conflicts and wars we're all currently unfortunately living, this becomes even a more real situation. So, and I hope authorities and those in charge are working on solutions for this, because I'm sure they're well needed at this time.
Yes, it's very important because, we have this idea that war is people running back and forth on a field as if we were in World War II, or big tank battles. And probably to a great extent today, war is all about cyber. And countries like Russia or Iran, who have very good cyber technology, can easily create tremendous chaos, not just military, but also civilian chaos, with the stroke of a few keys, without ever actually having to invade, and yet bring a country to a halt.
And that is happening. There is cyber warfare going on for the longest time. It doesn't mean we declared war against a country if it's doing cyber warfare, but it comes to this somehow. We just don't talk about it the same way.
Right. So there's really two types of warfare that are going on. You have the unfortunate levels of chaos that take place in places like Africa and Latin America. And then which is the type of violence you see on the streets with people rioting, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the second type of warfare, which is the cyber warfare, which impacts thousands or millions of people, but which you don't see on your television screen. You just feel it. And the third form, which we are just beginning to realize, is the question of biochemical warfare and the fact of the releasing of germs in order to create pandemics. So that there's all sorts of possibilities that we have never considered before.
Yeah, and that is definitely a scary thought. And, there were rumors, of course, proven to be not true, that could have happened when COVID started. But these rumors are in somehow workable, and that's what we have to prevent.
Yeah, and they actually have not been proven untrue. They have not been proven true, but they have not been proven untrue. We do know that we have discredited down the line the silly notion that it was a bat that flew 1,000 kilometers that somehow ended up in a Wuhan market. That we know is not be true. Now, if that was the fact that the media even bought such a silly thing, shows you how easily the media can be fooled. Now, was the stuff that came out of the Wuhan labs done on purpose or not on purpose? That we don't know. But we do know that it certainly was not by a bat that was smart enough to fly 1,000 kilometers and land at a specific place in the Wuhan market. And journalists ought to be ashamed of themselves. And I haven't heard any journalist apologize for spreading that type of silly stuff.
Well, that wasn't the only silly stuff. If you look through the history of COVID, it was. There were so many rumors on, and these are by so many people that had so many different ideas and
right.
had solutions.
But the problem was that for the first time we did not permit other people to come up with ideas. Look at how the media censored people who questioned some of the efficacy or problems with the vaccine. And now we see not only that our young people having heart palpitation problems, but we now was admitted that especially people who took the Pfizer vaccine, if you're over 60, you have a higher probability of stroke. And that's something that we're now admitting, but which we refuse to allow to discuss. So the real question was the fascism that crept into the Western media and did not allow discussion.
Yeah, no, and I fully agree. I'm for discussions, but I'm against spreading rumors that are baseless. But yes, a discussion is definitely
right? But there's a difference between a rumor and a question. So if someone spreads a rumor saying that COVID will uh, make you fly, that's a rumor. If someone questions the efficacy of a vaccine, that's not a rumor. That's scientific discussion. And science is based on questioning. The moment someone says to you, it's settled science, you know that person doesn't understand science because science is never settled. Science is always questioning and exploring and looking at uh, the world. Remember, it was settled science that the world was flat. It took Columbus or the Vikings or whomever to question that the world wasn't flat and that you wouldn't fall off. And in the same way, we did not permit, and that's to our great shame, that people to question the efficacy of some of these vaccines. And should everybody be taking them or not? And look how we forced people to take them. People lost their jobs. Now the United States military 2 days ago said, yes, anyone who had been fired for not taking the vaccine, they're now going to go back and rehire them again because of the fact that what they did was wrong and that it was based on false science.
yeah,
And
and
this came out of the media.
there certainly was a hysteria, and it's not only there are many other examples in the history
Sure.
of any country about hysteria, and every country sees problems different. Like Iran apparently feels it necessary to
Execute people.
impose a death penalty for not for a lady for not covering up. So every country has its own.
Right. But I don't think we want to be like Iran. And I don't think Western countries don't want to give you 15 minutes to defend your life and say that if you don't cover your head, you're going to, or you protest, you're going to die. I think that Iran took a giant step backwards into the Middle Ages. I don't think the West wants to do that.
No, and that is, of course, it's not only Iran. If you look at situations in Afghanistan and in many other countries,
Right.
um, countries do
Do
go
we,
step
but
back.
again, do we want to compare ourselves with the Taliban?
No, but there are also situations in the United States where we take a step backwards, and everyone has their opinion on it. Like our the Constitution guarantees everyone to carry a gun. I mean, there's so many different things where you can say, oh, they're
Right.
really kind of not up to speed, you know?
Well, there's a difference between something which is debatable and something which is rumorable. So you can debate policy, but you have to allow for free debate. So you're able to say, okay, this is how I interpret the Constitution, or this is how I do not a Constitution. But you cannot impose your will. On the other hand, if you do impose your will, then you become a fascist. And one of the big problems we have today is liberal fascism, because many people in the liberal side of the equation have become fascists, where they don't allow free speech. And that's what we saw in COVID. We became fascists. And so it's really important to be able to learn from that and never allow that to happen again. Now, for the first time, we're looking at children and how they need speech therapists because of the mistake with masking. And I think that historians in 100 years will look back on this and call this the age of silliness.
Yeah, and of course, there is a situation when there is a situation you're not confronted and you don't have a book to look in and say, okay, look, this is how we should react. This just hit everyone by surprise. There are
Yeah, sure.
takes were done in every aspect. I think protecting lives is the first duty
Of
every
course.
country has, and if there's if someone goes the wrong way about protecting lives, it still should be applauded. You know, that's what they do under the
Absolutely. No one is questioning the good intention, but there is a difference between, but do you learn? For example, you probably saw the news about 20 minutes ago that the Prime Minister of New Zealand has now resigned because she was so incredibly popular and had gone so far off the charts as far as democracy. She basically turned New Zealand into a fascist country. And in this, and so when she realized she would be slaughtered at the polls, she quit, which is okay, good. So there's some democracy left in New Zealand. But the issue is, what do we learn from it? And do we learn that we don't stifle debate? And that's important in the tourism world too, that we allow free debate and free speech, because what in the United States died was the First Amendment. And you don't want to, that amendment is there, the Bill of Rights, for a particular reason. What defines the Western world, be it Europe or the United States, is the ability to disagree politely and to show a debate. The moment you take that away, you're anti-science and you become a fascist.
Well, Peter, it's a discussion we can have for a long time.
Yes, a long
And
time.
we're not going to resolve this, but at least we have the freedom to discuss. So that's a
And
good
that's
thing.
the good point. And that is truly the good point. And the real point I think we need to emphasize is that not only do we have the freedom to discuss it, we're not afraid to discuss it. That we can have a discussion on the air, broadcast it, and people can think for themselves. And to that, I think we all should be applauding. And that's the basis of good tourism. Because tourism hopefully will lead to peace, and tourism allows people with different opinions to get to chat with each other. And without that, there is no tourism. So guess what? I think what we did today was probably a true symbol of the best of tourism.
Absolutely, Peter. So thank you very much. And let's repeat this in a few days.
Okay, and I'm looking forward to it. Oh, by the way, next week, as you know, I will be working in Mexico, working with what's called Pueblos Mágicos, which are the magical towns of Mexico in the state of Zacatecas. And I'll be in Mexico City and hoping to really be working with Mexico to be able to help Mexico get a firm grip on some of its issues of insecurity and help Mexican tourism be the wonderful thing that it ought to be. So
absolutely. And
well, I think our next broadcast should come from Mexico.
We should do that. Now, everyone else who's watching us now and you missed the first part, just stay tuned. It's going to repeat itself in within an hour. And if you wanted to watch this and many other shows we did, just go to BreakingNewsShow.com, or simply if you're on eTurbo News, you look at your right column and you find the link to all our various discussions.
Adios.
Aloha. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.